I'm going to start off by showing you how to do some little pine cones, all right? They're more basic, so I said you can pretty much use your paste straight away. Now this is my pine cone mold. All of the molds I'm showing you are manufactured by Katie Sue Designs. They're based in the UK, and there's katiesuedesigns.com in UK. There's also a US warehouse as well, so whichever is closest to geographical area where you live. But from the UK, they obviously ship out all over the world as well. Now, when you use the molds, most of the time, especially on some of my molds that are more detailed and molds that are a little bit more sort of shallow, I use a little bit of vegetable fat or shortening. So here I have some Crisco. So Crisco is a popular brand in the US. This is now available in the UK and Tesco's and Tesco's online. Unlike some of the brands in the UK like Trex, which typically you have to keep refrigerated, Crisco you can keep its room stable, so you just keep it at ambient temperature in your cabinet. It's always ready to use, but it doesn't get watery like Trex does if it stays out of the fridge. It's more of like a butter-like consistency. I generally use a brush for this, so I'm just going to use, so generally when I'm working and making things, I just put a little bit of the vegetable shortening on the back of my hand or on a little dish, and I'm just going to use a brush. This is actually a stencil brush for stenciling, and I just keep a brush purposely for using this technique. You don't want to use a brush you'd use for dusting flowers or painting, because what you'll end up doing is obviously messing up your brush. So all you do there is you're just going to put a little bit of shortening. I'm just going to show you a small one because I'm going to just show you using these. Obviously a little bit of the vegetable shortening on all of those. Okay, and then when you finish your project, you can just wipe that off. And then you're going to take your paste. Now there's two ways if you follow my videos. So as I explained, I'm really just doing a little sample of lots of different fun things. But I have a whole video on using the pine cones on my YouTube channel and on Katie Sue's channel for Flower Pro, which is katiesuedesigns.com/Flower Pro. There is, as I said, videos for pine cones. But if you just go to YouTube and just put Nicholas Lodge pine cones, they'll pop up. Now we use a size guide. And this is a plastic size guide, which was a new addition to my Flower Pro line this year. Makes it very durable. You can wipe it clean and rinse it and whatever. But we also have a paper one. If you're ordering anything from my website, nicholaslodge.com, we do include a paper one. You can also, where you've got the download for the recipes, you can also download the size guide onto cardboard. And then what you can do is just cut round the holes with a pair of scissors or an X-Acto knife, scalpel. Okay, just be careful, but as I said, you can cut out a cardboard one. But with the pine cones, you can also, so when you make the pine cones, generally when you make these, we use a number 8 small. So what that means is going to go through the number 8 hole. So if you were making, say, 2 dozen little pine cones for, say, little mini bûche de Noëls or cupcakes or whatever, you're just going to measure, so it just wants to go through the number 8 hole. All right, now this is still a little soft because I've just obviously just modified it in 10 minutes time. And then you could just make another, say, 2 dozen balls of paste the same size and just keep those underneath a little cup, okay? But anyway, so when you're making the pine cone, you're going to pop this over here. There we go. And so when you make the pine cone, you're going to make this into a basic cone shape. And I generally put a little bit of cornstarch, corn flour on there. This is just in a little pouch. All right, so just put a little bit of cornstarch on there. And then what you do is you place this into the mold. Just going to press this in. I'm using a cosmetic sponge. A cosmetic sponge is a great way, and especially on something like the pine cone, what this means is you have a flat top. Because if you use your thumb is going to leave almost like a divot in the center there, and it means when you do 2 halves, if you're making a 3-dimensional pine cone, the 2 halves won't stick together. Now I usually use my little flexi scraper, and I'm going to use my flexi scraper and just take off that excess paste. So you see that is going to give me my pine cone. Now there's lots of ways of using the pine cones. You can do them just like this. You pop it out of the mold, all right, and then that could be used, let's say for example, like on this cookie here, all right. So here I've got the pine cone. Here on this cookie, I've just got like half pine cones here, all right. So you can do them as half relief pine cones. A lot of times when I'm doing things, particularly on things I want to be standing up, I use spaghetti or angel hair pasta. I'm going to show you later, but for pine cones I generally use spaghetti. So I'm just going to break this to about 2 inches, about 5 centimeters in length. Okay, this is just regular spaghetti, and but what this means is a totally edible infrastructure. So when you're doing unicorns are a bit has-been now, they're not so popular, but when unicorns were very popular, I've seen a lot of times where people use wire and things like that, toothpicks, you always want to be very careful. So spaghetti or pasta noodles give you an edible, as I said, support system for your things you want to stand up. Now, you're going to use, you can use piping gel here, you could use corn syrup, you can use like Nicholas Lodge Super Bond, which is a thick glue I'll show you in a moment, but you just want something that's going to be a little bit sort of sticky. You could even use like honey as well, but just sort of, generally like edible glue is too watery, okay? And then what I'm going to do here is I'm going to come in with my, and you see how this has got a little channel in here, all right? This little channel is made for the wire or for the spaghetti, but you start off at a slight angle, all right? So I'm going to go in at a slight angle, and I'm just going to level out into the little channel there like so, all right? I'm just going to flex my mold here, and you can see how my pine cone comes out like this, beautiful pine cone. Now, if you're going to leave it as half pine cones, you can just dry those and then paint them, dust them, show you that in a second, and then you can use them. If you're going to make three-dimensional pine cones, like you see here, this is a three-dimensional one here. What I do is let this dry, and then I then make the second half. So again, I would pop this in my food dehydrator on 115 Fahrenheit, about 45 degrees centigrade, for approximately about 45 minutes to an hour. That will be totally dry then. If you don't have a food dehydrator, you can, of course, just let this dry at ambient room temperature. But again, as I said, obviously, those of you watching from Asia, you know, where you have high humidity, it's an advantage to use that to dry off your flower, rose cones, things like that. Now, if you don't have a size guide, with both of the antler I'm going to show you and the pine cone, you can also just take a ball of paste, all right? So you can just take a ball of paste, just make it into a basic cone shape, and then what you can actually do there is you can just press this in with your fingers, all right? And then you can just use, and then you're just going to saw it off. So both of those you can do without the size guide, all right? It's just that when I'm doing production work and in classes, I use the size guide as a way of standardizing the size ball of paste I make. All right, so if you're making the, obviously you're making a three-dimensional pine cone, what you would then do is you take, this is dry one, all right, so imagine this is a dry one. So then what you would then do is you take a little bit of, as I said, piping gel. I'll also show you here my Super Bond. Super Bond is a very strong glue. It's part of my Nicholas Lodge products. And what I do there is I'm just going to put a little bit of Super Bond onto here, or your piping gel. And what that's going to do is going to make this surface sticky, all right? And then I'm going to take the Super Bond, pop the lid back on that, and then, but I said, piping gel, corn syrup could also be used. And then what you would then do is you take your dry half, all right, so this would need to be dry, and you then put the dry half on top of the soft half, because when this is dry, it means you can press it down firmly. And then what you then do is you flex this, and then when you take this out, you're going to have your beautiful three-dimensional pine cone, okay? So you can use these as three-dimensional pine cones like here, or as I said, and you can use these as half relief. I'm going to show you here a half relief pine cone. Now, you can also, of course, wire the pine cones. So if you watch my videos, you'll see how I wire my pine cones. So when I'm doing, for example, in my classes, when I'm doing sugar flowers, you can see you can wire these in with, these are pipe pine needles. Here I've got spruce made with flower paste or gum paste. So they look really beautiful. And, but as I said, I have that on my videos, so you can watch my full tutorial on that. I'm using this particular one. Now, when you're using the vegetable fat or shortening on here, what you would do there is just put a little bit of dish soap washing up liquid in here, use a nail brush or a little small brush, and then rinse them or pop them in a dishwasher, okay? But you want to get that oil out of the mold, because if not, it will just go, if you put this away and stored it for months, it's going to go like a yellow wax, like rancid, okay? So that's how we would do the pine cones. Now, when you are finishing the pine cones, there's lots of ways to do them. You can leave them just natural, all right? So you can just leave them natural brown. I like to do, as I said, some sort of like painting effects on here. This one I'm going to show you with pearl paint. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to use a little bit of, this is some rainbow dust pearlescent paint. A lot of food color companies have something comparable to this. So I'm just going to put a little tiny bit of this onto here. And this is going to give you this sort of almost like a frosty look on your pine cone. So see, I'm just going to use some of the pearl paint, and I'm going to use a flat brush, okay? And I'm brushing from source away from source, so which means I'm just brushing from the top coming down like that. And you see how you're going to get this lovely pearlescent look onto the pine cone, okay? So that's one option you have. Now the other option you have, which is what I've used here, is like almost a whitewash effect. This is very trendy at the moment with like barn weddings, rustic, naked, semi-naked, very naked cakes. People a lot of times in interior design take real pine cones and go over with like white acrylic paint or whitewash, chalk paint, and it gives this sort of nice sort of shabby chic look. As we call it here in the United States. And when you do that, what I use is I take a little bit of white powder. So this is actually rainbow dust powder. This is white icing whitener, white dust in powder. And what you would do there is you just take a little bit of the, again, you can do this on a dish. I'm just showing you this on a piece of paper. Now, if you don't have that, you can also use like a white gel color. This is AmeriColor, Wilton, Chef Master. Many companies do white gel color. But you can get white powder, but titanium dioxide is used as a natural whitener in commercial sugar paste rolled fondant. In a lot of commercial products, it's used in toothpaste. So it's used for both food and non-food items as well. But basically, it's a natural whitener. And then what you would then do there is you would take just a little bit of vodka. So I'm going to take now just a little bit of vodka here with my white powder. So just going to use a little bit of white. And I actually prefer the powder because it's not quite so runny. All right, so you're just going to mix that up. So you're going to make this like white paint. And I'm going to show you this on this one here. So you see what I do there is you're just going to go over the top of this. But you see how I'm just brushing in one direction. And it gives you these really beautiful pine cones. Now, when, for example, with the movie Frozen, you know, obviously that's still sort of quite trendy with little girls and things, and even brides for Christmas time. With Sydney Galpin with Simi Isomalt, you can take the isomalt and you can actually use the molds to make isomalt pine cones. And one of my students did those in sort of blue-colored Simi Cakes isomalt. So, but you can do beautiful, as I said, and then of course you could use silver or gold on it. So there's lots of ways. And the other thing is with the pine cones, especially when you're doing just like the half relief ones or the small pine cones flat on cookies and cupcakes and things, you could also totally use marzipan, all right, which is almond paste. And then also another thing you can use as well would be to use like a modeling chocolate. So modeling chocolate also is really yummy. And if you're going to use it on something you're going to consume, but the nice thing about using, as I said, using here the spaghetti, it means you have a total edible support system. Okay, so this is your little pine cone. All right, so those are really fun to use on all sorts of things. As I said, if you're attaching them to cookies, you just put them on flat. Like here, you can see I've got a little cookie with my new toadstool and mushroom mold, which I'm going to talk a little bit about in a moment. And I've got some little, obviously, pine cones there. You just attach them with royal icing or piping gel onto your cookie. Now, you can also, the nice thing about the pine cone mold is you can also make smaller pine cones. If you want smaller pine cones, you just put a small piece of paste in there. So you see how you just would partly fill the mold, and you can make little tiny ones. So if you're using them, say, on the side of a cake or on little small mini cupcakes, you can make them in scale. These also, of course, could be put onto there. And because they're a lot smaller, you could, instead of using spaghetti, I could just use angel hair pasta, which is a lot thinner, okay? Now, when you use pine cones, of course, on my videos, I show how to use floral tape to make pine cones. I show how to pipe pine cones. I'm going to show you a technique I've used for a lot of my projects I make, which is actually to use angel hair pasta. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my angel hair pasta. Again, I'm breaking this into about 2-inch, about 5-centimeter pieces, like this. Now, angel hair pasta is thinner than, obviously, regular spaghetti. And then what I have here is I have some green softened sugar paste or rolled fondant. So I'm using here just a standard green sugar paste or rolled fondant. So just take a little tiny bit. This is actually about 25 grams, okay, so about 1 ounce. Put it into a container, and then what you would then do to that is you take a water spray bottle, okay, and you just spray some water in there, okay, until you've got about half a teaspoon. And then I start with a palette knife, just going to mix that up. And so what you're actually going to do is you're going to add enough water to this so it becomes like a royal icing consistency. So this is literally just, as you can see, it has a shine to it, all right, but this is literally just sugar paste or rolled fondant and water. Okay, that's all I have here. And then what you do is you put this into a little piping bag. So I'm using here a piping bag with a number 2 piping tip or nozzle. Just pop this out the way. And so then I have here number 2. I have this in a little tipless bag, but you could use a parchment bag. But because this product keeps, all right, this actually keeps for years. I've just finished a class recently where I had some purple I used for stenciling. So this is wonderful for filling in gaps on cakes when you're doing panel method on a rolled fondant cake. You can use this to fill in the seam. It's great for attaching decorations to a cake. You can use this also for brush embroidery. You can use this for stenciling, and then also I use it for piping. So you can fill in the bottom of a cake so you don't have a seam. But I could just keep this little in a tip, so if you have extra piping nozzles or tips, I could keep this in here, and then next Christmas just take it out of the bag and use it straight away. It's going to be perfectly okay. But the purple I just finished with, I made actually 4 years ago. Now what we do here is you're going to take your angel hair pasta. Now you really use very, very little of this product, all right? Now this can be done, like obviously Valerie and Christina are amazing, the Queen of Hearts, obviously amazing in buttercream, so you can do this in buttercream as well. But the thing with buttercream, of course, it can be, as I said, moisture sensitive, okay, but you could do this with green buttercream. You can also do this with green royal icing as well, but I love to use the softened sugar paste or fondant because it just means you can obviously use it for a little extended period of time, whereas royal icing you have to rebeat and things. So you see, I'm going to put this into the bag, all right, so going into the piping bag, and then all I do is I'm just going to pipe and I'm just going to pull that out. So you see what I've actually done is I've covered this over with the icing there. Now you're going to take, there are 2 ways to do this. You can take a pair of tweezers, and then as you make them, you can just pop them into a little foam block like this. I'll just show you one more of these. Now, of course, you can make these longer as well or shorter, but just push this into the bag. So the reason why you need to have at least about 25 grams of paste is you have to have enough because your spaghetti or angel hair pasta is going up here, you see? And of course, if you wanted to make longer ones. On the bûche de Noël behind me, the larger Yule log, I've got bigger pine cones on there, and I've obviously made those longer. I made them about 2.5 inches in length, okay? So you're just going to do that, and you can put these into here. Or you can use them straight away. You can make them and then push them into your cupcake. And then just make sure you keep this in a little plastic bag, and then obviously that would be ready, and in like 2 weeks time, 2 months time, 2 years time, you can just come take that bag and carry on piping straight away. Okay, so really fun, as I said, technique to use. Now, so here I've got a little mini bûche de Noël. This is covered, and I have a full tutorial on this, all right? So this is actually on my Flower Pro tutorials. So again, if you go to my Flower Pro, I have so katiesuedesigns.com, and then it's just /Flower Pro. On there, I have a tutorial on making the larger bûche de Noël, and then also the mini Yule log here, the little mini bush. And what I've done there is I've covered this. I've used modeling chocolate on the ends of the bûche de Noël, and then I've done this with the Katie Sue continuous bark mold. This is actually a little mini Swiss roll in here. And what I've done there is I've just made some little holes because though you're going to go through the modeling chocolate, if your modeling chocolate has dried a little bit, you just want to make some little holes so you don't break your spaghetti. And then all you're going to do is you're going to just take your, just going to push these in. So you can let these dry for a few minutes. They don't take long to dry. And then you're just going to pop these in like this. And this will be your, as I said, these will give you your little pieces here. Break that one off just a little bit, and then that, but you can literally put them in soft, or as I said, you can have them pre-made. So you see how you're going to have your little pine needles in there. And then I'm going to take, got a little bit of white royal icing here. I've already got some white royal icing on there, and so I'm just going to use some white royal icing. I'm also, the softened fondant I've just used, all right, the softened sugar paste or fondant I've just used, you can also use that for snow as well, okay? So I'm just going to just put a little bit of royal icing then around there. And then here I'm just going to break this off. All right, so it's going to break that off. And then I'm just going to pop that into there like so. And there you see you have your little mini bûche de Noël with the classic pine cones on. Now, of course, these could be 3-dimensional, but when you're thinking about selling some of these products, you know, it's very quick to make the half relief pine cones. But I use most of the time on a cupcake or things like that. I use, as I said, the pine cone there, and just the half pine cone is more than enough. And you can see here, this is another mini bush. This has got my little toadstool or mushroom on there, you see? So really cute ideas for, as I said, for Christmas time. Because, you know, classically a bûche de Noël has usually meringue mushrooms or toadstools. So this is just, as I said, using molds.